Hey guys, welcome to the inaugural episode of Real Estate for the Real Good. I'm Nathan Karsten, your host, a North Texas realtor and investor. Throughout my real estate journey, I've witnessed the transformative potential that real estate offers individuals, families, and communities, providing them with opportunities they might not ever have had. So whether you're considering buying your first primary residence amidst today's challenging market, pondering the idea of investing in real estate for financial growth, or simply seeking to use your home to intentionally bless others, this podcast is for you. Normally, I'll have the pleasure of co-hosting the show with my wife, Kristen. However, today, we have a special guest co-host, my 10-year-old son. His name is Brady, and I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to learn together with him as we got to have this conversation with another father and son who are just a few steps ahead of where we're going. In today's episode, we'll dive into Jacob's remarkable journey. He'll be sharing how he cleverly turned his first home into an investment property during his years at the University of Oklahoma. Remarkably, Jacob defied the norm, steering clear of the burden of student loan debt, and instead successfully graduated college with a positive GPA and net worth. So stay tuned as Jacob and his dad reveal his story of acquiring, leasing, and managing the property with minimal initial investment. This brilliant approach not only allowed Jacob to enjoy 3 rent-free years during his university life, but also led to significant appreciation in the value of his home. To provide a comprehensive account, we'll be dividing this episode into 2 parts. Part A will focus on Jacob's upbringing in his parents' home, a vital foundation that prepared him to independently own and manage property at such a young age. In Part B, which we'll release next week, we'll get into the numbers and provide real-life insights into managing tenants while also attending university. So buckle up for an inspiring and informative ride as we hear Jacob's extraordinary real estate journey.
Welcome to Real Estate for the Real Good, a podcast based right here in Denton, Texas. I'm your host, Nathan, and I'm here today with a special guest co-host, my son, Brady. The mission of our podcast is to see individuals and communities flourish through real estate. We want to find the people and places experiencing the blessings of God through the joy of surrender to His direction. Brady, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
Doing good? Yeah? How's the summer been treating you?
Hot.
Yeah. Well, I am so glad to have you be as my co-host today because I think we'll be able to learn a lot together in our discussion, particularly with the guests that we have today. So let me introduce our very first guest to the show, my longtime friend, Luis, and his son, Jacob. Later on, we'll be getting into y'all's story that I've had the privilege to follow over the last 4 years through my conversations with your dad, Jacob, on how you were able to purchase your first home right out of high school with your parents' help, of course. And now have graduated college with no student loan debt, big equity in your house, and have a solid financial foundation as you really get started in your young adult life. I think it's a story that really shows what may be possible on the other side of the coin for the reality of so many young adults graduating college with suffocating student loans and no financial security to speak of. So your story, of course, may not be repeatable for every college student, but I think it is for many. I just don't think home ownership, real estate investing, or even financial education are being modeled well in a broad sense by our older generations. And even when they are, there is even less intentional training or discussion on the matter. So I hope for your story in this episode that their eyes will really be opened and they'll be encouraged to see what might be possible. And I think really with your story, I in the real sense, I have the belief that it could really set somebody's future on a different path than what it would have been if they'd never heard this episode. So welcome to the show, Luis and Jacob. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. We'll get started just with some introductions, and we'll just let you guys, Luis, we'll start with you. Tell a little more about yourself, your family, what you do for a living, and anything else that you might want to share.
Okay. Luis Gutierrez, married, been married for 20 years, got 2 boys, Jacob, 22, Mason's 18. So already grown. We've lived in this area for 20 years, and I'm a firefighter in Richardson. I've been there for a little over 18 years, and that's how I met Nate. We've known each other since he started. I like to say about 2 years after me.
Yeah, I think it was just about 17 months. Is that right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
But that's it. Work for the fire department, hang out with my family, and enjoyed raising my boys. And now getting to be on the other side of that is watching them be young men and kind of set out on their own paths.
Yeah, and I would just want to say, and you and I've told you before, but would want everybody else to know just how much I respect the way that you've led your family, and the way you've carried yourself on the fire department. So you've always been someone that I've been glad to look to kind of set as an example of somebody that's a couple steps ahead of where I was, and so glad that you're here. Can you share a little bit more about your experience with homeownership, even growing up as a kid, what you saw modeled in your family, and then just your thoughts around home ownership in general?
Okay. So growing up, we lived in a house. There was never renting or an apartment or anything like that, but there was no discussion on it. My parents didn't have much growing up. And when they got out of the house, they were able to purchase a home back in the 70s, and we lived in the same house the whole time growing up. But there wasn't discussion about real estate or investment or a home being a good idea for an investment, something that can set you up for the future. I didn't know anything about that. That more so came along once I moved away from Amarillo and came to the Metroplex, got on the fire department. You start learning from other people. And, we've talked about it. One of the places you can learn a ton of things is just sitting around the kitchen table at the fire station.
Yeah.
You may learn, some of it good, some of it bad, but there's definitely a lot of discussion. And I picked up a lot of things from that. And so being early on in my career, just the older guys talking about, hey, get out of an apartment. You want to make sure you get a house. You want to make sure you set that foundation. And so that was kind of my plan. And I started working in 2004 and bought a house in 2006, and been a homeowner since. And I guess I can even rewind before that. When I was 19, I bought my first house in Amarillo. And that was something that I'm not for sure where that came from. That had to be a God thing, just something he spoke to me about. I looked at rent on apartments and saw the price, and then started talking to my sister who's older. She had just bought a house, and asking her about her mortgage. I was like, man, the price is the same. I think I could do that. So I was able to purchase a house at 19. And
so you had a job that you were able to qualify for the mortgage at 19.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I just started at I didn't go to college. It's not something that I ever wanted to do. And I worked at a copper refinery, so I made decent money for the time. And I was able to qualify, and my parents, they came and they were the co-signers for myself as well.
Okay. So you experienced the co-signership too?
Yes.
Okay, great. I didn't know that.
I did. And so I had that house, and I kept that for a couple of years until, life happens, things happen, and I ended up selling that house, and we moved over here. We left Amarillo and moved to the Metroplex.
So after having that house for a couple of years, what was your situation as far as equity in the home, and did you walk away with any money or?
No, at the time, let's see, I bought it in 99, and then when I moved out, it was 2002, and everything was pretty down at the time, which is one of the reasons I sold it. Mm-hmm. Copper market had gone down. Everything changed after September 11th. So prices hadn't increased like they have, recently.
Sure.
So when I left, after realtor fees and everything, I just broke even. But
okay.
I didn't lose any money on it. And when I got out, I was able to get out just broke even.
Yeah, and even just the experience of going through the buying process and having that knowledge, I'm sure gave you some confidence as you move forward with buying your next.
Yes.
Home.
Yeah, it definitely taught me a lot, as far as setting everything up. You got to get all your utilities set up, paying bills on time, home insurance, escrow, all those type of things, and then just taking care of your home.
Yeah, that's a big deal. The maintenance. Yeah, and then so fast forward a little bit before we get to you, Jacob. As you guys, I mean, obviously you have owned homes since moving to DFW. Do you want to share a little bit about your experience on home ownership now, and how you've seen it benefit you and your family, either financially or just in the sense of being able to create a home, create some stability? What are some positive negatives that you've experienced or have been able to share with your sons as you've thought about home ownership?
I think it's been a big part of it. My goal was to have a home already established before Jacob started kindergarten. And so when we bought that house in 2006 in Keller, it was I was looking for something we could afford, a good school district, and a place where, young families, we could kind of start off raising our boys in a stable situation and not, switching apartments every 6 months or a year or whenever the lease was up.
Right.
So we bought that house, and he started school and was able to go kindergarten all the way through graduating in the same school district.
Gotcha.
And that big part of that was being in a home. We ended up buying, I guess, 2 other homes before he graduated, but they were both in that same school district. And each time we were able to, the first one we bought had 0 money down. Then the next time we were able to put a bigger down payment down. And then the next house, the same way, we gained money on each one.
Yeah.
And able to purchase something that at the beginning would have never thought we'd be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a great way, even for someone who may not be in a mindset of investing, a way to passively kind of enforce or force some investing experience, or even just the, you're forced to collect this appreciation on your home that you may not even really be educated in before you get started.
Yeah, at the beginning, that wasn't the plan. It just, but it was a definite benefit.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Jacob, let's get to you. I'm aware of some recent changes in your life, but of course our listeners might not be. Just go through the last. I'd love to hear even just the last few months this summer of all the changes that have been going through, and then we'll get into your decision on wanting to buy your first home and everything later on. But yeah, just kind of give an introduction on who you are, what you're doing, what all God's doing in your life right now.
Yeah, name's Jacob Gutierrez. This last year has been quite the interesting one for me. It's really been a culmination of everything that I've been trying to, get started in my life. It's been goals and dreams being realized, and I guess it's kind of difficult to really portray and picture, even for me to realize how big of a deal it is. But yeah, this last May, all within 3 days, I graduated to be the first graduate in my family, first generation, with a bachelor's degree from a large university. I just graduated from the University of Oklahoma with a Bachelor in Business Administration, focused on entrepreneurship and venture management. I also commissioned to the Air Force as a second lieutenant, currently an officer and moving on to active duty this coming September. And I also got engaged. And so life has been happening. It's been happening fast. All of that happened within 3 days. Graduated on Friday, had my commencement on Saturday, and then I commissioned and got engaged on that Sunday. So God's really been working. He's really been pushing me and forcing me to grow, really, extra responsibilities and things like that. But it's really cool that it doesn't feel like this huge, massive change, because it's been something that's been coming. It's been something that, through my work with God, with my dad, with my family and everybody, it's something that I've been prepared for, not something that, oh my goodness, this just slapped me in the face. But, the past 4 years of preparing to become an officer, and even before that, knowing that this is what I wanted to do and this is what I'm, focusing my life towards doing. And so then when it comes, it doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, all this weight is on my shoulders. Right. Now it's, this is what I'm supposed to do, and it feels right because following what God is telling me to do. Yeah,
that's so great. In whether or not we are able to always step in directly to what we envisioned our future would be. I think, just taking the mindset of, God, this is where you have me today. I'm going to be obedient in this moment and take the next step forward that you're lighting the path for me.
Absolutely.
I know that wherever you take me, I know that you're gonna take me to the next step as well. So
we've
there's
got plenty of examples about that we can share today for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to it. We've got you graduated from college this summer. You're commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Air Force. What's your job gonna be?
Yep. So I picked up my Air Force specialty code is 922T0, which is pilot trainee. So thankfully, all the stars aligned once again. I did all the things that I was supposed to do, and God kept me on this path to become a pilot for the United States Air Force. So I'm heading to undergraduate pilot training to go get to learn how to fly airplanes for the world's greatest Air Force. So
yeah,
very blessed.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah, you're starting in the fall with that.
So
where will you be based?
Yeah, so I'm going up to Vance Air Force Base, which is in Enid, Oklahoma, which is one of 3 pilot training bases that the Air Force currently trains pilots out of. But they're doing it a little bit of an interesting way. I have to go on what's called casual status first. So I'll be active duty, but I'll be more helping out around the base. Possible. There's a couple different jobs that I could pick up, but a lot of them are going to be admin stuff, mainly just to get my pay going, get me acclimated to being on active duty and things like that. And I'm just waiting for my actual class start date. So once my undergraduate pilot training starts, right now that's scheduled for next May. A lot of people have been getting bumped up, so that could be as early as February or March or something like that. Not 100% sure. But
and how long do you think you'll be in Enid?
In Enid, so once undergraduate pilot training starts, that's 10 days longer than a year, so 375 days. So once that starts, I'll be there for another year.
At least a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So more than likely, I'll be there about a year and 8 months or so.
Okay. Great. And so you're engaged.
Yes.
Do you have a date set for the wedding?
Yes, November 19th.
November 19th.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I think one more thing before we get into your decision on buying your first home, is just kind of thinking back through your childhood and even middle school, high school. And we got to hear from your dad, of course, but what are some things that you were able to observe? And I think this will be really helpful for me as I think about the way that Brady is seeing me, make my own decisions financially or investing, or the way that we run our home. Mm-hmm. So what are some things that you feel like your mom and your dad did well in kind of preparing you for, and specifically, I think, for financial and, even in your decision for purchasing the home. And then if there are some things that you think, if you feel comfortable with sharing some things that maybe you were surprised by, that you wish had been more explicit or explained better, or from them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful question. Something that I'd love to be able to talk on. I think one of the biggest things was growing up, they were very open, very honest with us about financials and things that were going on. If we ask the question of, hey, why can't we have Wendy's every night? It's just, hey, we don't have the money for it.
Right.
And that's just as simple as it gets. And then even moving into buying our other homes, we built our second home. I guess that would have been 2014, around there. 2014, we built the second home, and we were moving out of that first childhood home that we bought in 2006. And see, even me speaking about it now, I say we, just because that's how it's always felt.
Yeah.
It's always been family. It's always been an us decision. Even with me and my little brother, when we went to the house, we got to help pick out, okay, how are we going to design this thing? What are we going to do with the cabinets? Little things like that. And financials were never hidden. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that's always surprised me when talking to my other friends and stuff about, just what their parents do and things like that. They're like, I don't even know how much they make, and I don't know what they're doing. I don't know any of this stuff. And, it's not to say that you should know every little detail, but for me, it helped out a lot because the transparency allowed me to learn. When I'm 13, 14 years old, and they're looking at purchasing a home and I'm involved in that decision, it's cool. I take it seriously, and it forces me to learn and grow with them because they were learning and growing at the same time.
Yeah, so it wasn't a foreign concept to
exactly.
you, and you got
so I got to learn and grow with them, and
Mhm.
that's one of the coolest things.
It's great.
That has been awesome is they haven't hidden any of that stuff. They were
Yeah.
very humble about where they were at. They were very honest about where they're at, and if they were learning something, they wanted to make sure that we were
Yeah.
learning it, because at that point, that puts us 20 years ahead of them. You know what I mean?
And so it's encouraging to me because I got to see that from afar.
Yeah.
You know, I can remember being in y'all's house and you guys had that chalkboard
Yeah.
in your living room,
Yeah.
and it just had listed out all these different financial goals.
Yeah.
And goals for your family and goals for paying off paying off debt, and so it's encouraging to me that you receive that so well. And so even in Goots, you know, you may be able to speak on this a little bit better. And for listeners, Goots is also Luis is also Goots, and so that's
a lot easier.
Yeah, at the fire department, that's his name, and so you'll probably hear me refer to him as Goots again. But did you feel like as you guys were leading out in that and being open, was it natural for you to do that in a way that that's kind of the way you would have done it anyways, or was it intentional to do it in that way so that Jacob and Mason would be able to really grow along with that? Or I mean, you guys, I think, are just, especially Betty, your wife, are just open people, I think, and so I think some of that probably came naturally, but was there some intentionality in that as well?
No, I mean, I'd like to be able to say it was intentional. You know, we planned it out, but definitely not. I mean, if you knew Betty and I's story from the very beginning, you just see that we're both very different people. And when God got a hold of us and changed our lives, we made a decision just to follow him, to go wherever we're led to go, to do what he calls us to do. And so really it just came natural. It was just part of raising the boys and having a family and doing things together. It's just what we did. You know, hearing about it now or seeing it now, I see that those things stuck, but there wasn't an intentionality behind it as far as like, I want to show them so that they could do this in the future. It was just kind of what we did, you know. It's the way that I guess God led us, you know, to raise our boys.
And I think there's an openness that comes from that place of surrender with God.
Yes.
So there's a lot of, you know, even with Brady or my girls or with my family, the times that it's difficult for me to have that openness with them are the times when I'm leading out on my own. I've got all the weight on my shoulder for whether or not whatever I'm trying to do is going to be a success or a failure. But when I can get to this place of surrender of like, God, you have me here, whether it works out or not, it's going to be on your, you know, like is your plan. And so, you know, it's not, you know, as we move forward in this thing that I thought was going to turn into one thing, it becomes another. It's not necessarily a failure on my part, and so I'm more free to be open, you know, as you guys I think have done really well for your boys. Yeah,
I'd love to speak to that as well. I think one of the biggest factors in it has been the humility. You know, he's always led with the truth behind it. He sent me something on Instagram the other day. Is your father is going to be the only man that'll be truly happy with you being better than him. And he's always led us with that, you know, mindset. And it's been so cool because for us growing up, Dad's a firefighter. I'm sure you can understand this, Brady. It's so cool. He's your hero. He does everything. He's always been the pinnacle of the type of man that I want to be, but he's always led with the mindset of he wants us to be better. He wants us to learn, and, you know, his ceiling where he reaches in life, he wants that to be our stepping stone. He wants that to be, you know, that's where we're pushing off of. And he's really taught me to lead with that mentality as well. And so that's my goal for my kids, is for that to be the exact same. But as far as the intentionality of sharing with us, I think a lot of that came out of that mindset, just that humility of, hey, if I'm learning this now, but y'all have the opportunity to learn this when you're still 8-9 years old, it's kind of just logically, it makes sense that y'all are going to be able to do more things than I was, because y'all are learning things that I'm learning at 30 at 10 years old. And so I think that aspect is part of following God, making sure that God wants you to continue to grow and for your family to become prosperous so that you can share with more people. And I think that's just part of it. I think that it went hand in hand, and that's something that was always modeled for us.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and for me, I've kind of got this catch that I think God is trying to take away from me on prosperity financially, especially. I feel like, and I think maybe a reaction to the prosperity gospel, but this feeling that like anything that God gives me outside of my direct spiritual relationship with Him is either something that He's at best just not involved in, or at worst it's something He's really against. And so anything that I've pursued in business or financially has always been this thing like, okay, I've got to go do this thing on my own apart from what God is leading me in. And I think as we as I'm growing, maturing, and I'm working with other believers, and you see that part of God's kingdom coming on earth is this flourishing. And that's part of what the podcast I think I really want to be about is in flourishing in all areas of our life. And of course, we're not promised health, we're not promised money, we're not promised any of these things. But as a general rule, these things start become a byproduct of our obedience and our surrender to His plan. They can be, and so whether God, like Paul says, I've learned contentment in plenty or in want. Wherever God has me is where He has me. Whether that's in abundance of financial position that I can share and give and bring His kingdom forward in that way, or if it's in a financial want, I'm content with what He has provided, just in Jesus and in relationship with Him, and I'm rich and can give out of that as well. So, and so just this idea of whatever God gives us, whatever He blesses us with, is ours in the sense only that He wants us to bless others in a way that reveals His glory to other people. Yeah.
And I think the big deal with that is just recognizing that it's all given to us. And so just learning from even the story of Job, that he was very wealthy and prosperous, but all of it was taken away. But the thing that we had to learn from that is that he never turned his back on God. He never forsake God. He never cursed Him. He never said, "How dare you do this to me?" Because everything that he had beforehand was given to him. And so with the humility of, hey, I don't deserve any of this. And so I think that's one of the biggest things is when you make good decisions in your life and it does end up yielding fruit, sometimes you start to feel like you've earned that, like that's yours. But recognizing that at the root of it all, every breath that you take is given to you. And so then therefore from everything past that, it's also given to you and can also be taken away. And so to have the humility to just know that, I'm enjoying this while I have it, and I want to be able to use this to share with other people, because that's been a cool thing growing up. I can count on probably about half of my life we've had somebody else living with us, and it's been something that was just made possible by as we grew, as the family moved further, we had more money to be able to bless others. And so if a cousin was down and out and they needed somewhere to stay, we were like, cool, absolutely, we got an extra room. And those are just things that just can't happen if you don't have money. And so that's been the example that I've been taught with. And so that's what I'd love to be able to do, is to be able to bless others. And so the prosperity, setting myself up to be financially free, I'd like to be able to be financially free for myself so that I can give to others. And it's been modeled for me. And so I'd love to be able to continue to do that.
So good.
He's reminded me of a lot of things. Like when I said there was an intentionality, there wasn't an intentionality as far as teaching them investments or things like that. But always, I knew my mindset and where I'd come from, and I always wanted them to be better, like he talked about. So I figured it's never too early for them to learn.
Yeah.
Let them learn so that they can continue on. And then as far as our house, when we made a decision to move from the one to the other, I didn't even think about the investment part of it or what it may return.
Yep.
But I knew we wanted something bigger because they were getting to be teenagers. We wanted something with more room where they could bring their friends over, they could feel welcome, they could hang out. We had more space for family to come. And through that, we had the space for when people needed it. We didn't plan that. We didn't know that that was going to work. But, my parents lived there, had a nephew live there for a little while. We've had one of Mason's friends stayed there quite a bit. So guys just opened those doors. We just kind of, okay, let's do this. It felt like something the guy was putting on our heart. We were obedient to do it. And then he turned it into a whole lot more. And then at the end of the day, it also became an investment for us to be able to continue to
and that speaks to, again, it's just God giving you this, like, okay, I'm going to light the path.
Yes,
one step.
That one step.
I'm going to light the path, maybe 2 steps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then say, okay, like, I don't see how you're going to take this,
right.
or it's even a step that I don't understand how it's going to benefit my family in the short run at all, or benefit me, or benefit anyone. But just being obedient with that one step, and then being able to look back on what God has brought you through and how He has blessed you, just continues to increase that faith that you have in being able to take that next step one more time. So that's great. Before we get into your story to buy your house, Jacob, just give Brady a chance. As you've been listening, if you have any questions before we move on about how Jake was raised, or
did your dad make you mow the lawn in the heat?
Oh yeah, man. I don't know that you want to know about how I grew up, because I think probably we got pictures when I was about 2 or 3 of me helping him mow the lawn. I would stand on the little, how there's 2 bars on the lawnmower. He would stand on the top one, I'd be on the little one. So he was training me up just to be able to help out from even back then. But I was talking to my fiance yesterday, actually, because we were out there working out in the heat, or he was, and he came in and reminded me of how, we grew up and we would be out there in the heat, and I would be carrying these buckets of water up and down the street, or he brought a tractor tire home from the fire department. I'd be flipping that up and down the driveway when I was about your age, your size. And so, but yeah, that was something that we always did. And it seems like mean. It seems like, this is super hard, but it sets you up for your future now, because when the Air Force tells me to go do some workout or go do anything, it's like, oh, this is a piece of cake. I did harder stuff. I was mowing the lawn out when it was 115 degrees. I was in the garage working out. And so it sucks during it, but then later you'll be like, man, I'm tougher than everybody at my school. Like, you're going to go to high school and they're going to tell you to do a workout and everybody's going to be dying, and you're going to be like, man, I did this when I was 8. You know what I mean? So
what are some good ways do you think that your dad encouraged you to do that point of, like, well, how hard do I push in a way that pushes him past his limit, but doesn't push him so hard that he doesn't ever want to listen?
I don't know that there's any perfection about any bit of it. And I don't know that there's any way to reach that perfection, because we did get to points sometimes where I'm like, I don't ever want to touch a weight again. I don't ever want to touch a football again. I don't want to do anything physical ever again, because I hate this. And then there was other times that we got to a point where it's like, man, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, and I want to be a professional baseball player. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think the biggest part of it that made the difference for us is seeing the love behind it, seeing that the truth behind everything that went on was because he loved us and he wanted us to be better, and he wanted to push us. A lot of times he wanted us to want more for ourselves than we wanted, you know what I mean? But the reality behind it every single time was that there was love. And
Yeah.
because sometimes it did go too far and sometimes
Sure.
it wasn't perfect. And
Yeah.
like I said, I don't know that there is a perfect formula.
Yeah.
I don't know that you'll ever be able to sit down and look at it and from both
Mhm.
sides, everybody can say, yep, that was done to the exact limit. Because if you think it was done to, the actual end, it probably wasn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He pushed me to my limit. You never know where that limit is until
Sure.
it breaks sometimes. But in reality, we knew at the end of the day where
Yeah.
it was coming out of.
Yeah,
And
I think that for me, there's something I want to grow in more.
Yeah.
is because Brady feels it. I think is just I'm always in like a correcting mode because I'm seeing a lot of it is faults that I grew up with, and so I see hit my faults that he's struggling with, and I feel like I know how to pull him out of those, but a lot of times it's so much that there's less of like just enjoying being together. What do you think, B? Yeah,
I think
so. It's always something that we can work on, huh?
Just a lot of cleaning.
Yeah. And that'll never stop because then you'll feel like, oh, now I've got my own place. I don't got to clean. And then you look at it 2 weeks later and it's like, oh, this is terrible. I really do need to clean. That's crazy. Yeah. It's just things.
And we'll get into that in a minute about just,
the
about,
little things.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely can feel with you, Brady, because I'm the oldest child. You're the oldest child. And it's not something that everybody understands. But it's a good responsibility and you're going to love it growing up. Right now, some things may seem tough, but make sure that you enjoy every bit of it, because being a kid, especially being the oldest and being able to take care of your little siblings and just be there, be that grown up. You know how it is. You're the man of the house when he's out at work and stuff like that. And so take on that responsibility. You're not going to be perfect, but take it in stride. I think Dad can talk to a little bit that you were talking about with when you start to see some of the things, parenting a little bit out of that fear and the struggle, between
definitely
doing that and not.
Definitely, that's what I was gonna say. If you listen to Jake, he gives me definitely way too much credit. It makes me sound like I had it all together and I did everything right, and that wasn't the case at all. I definitely failed many, many times, and I pushed him way too hard many times, and was too hard on him. And a lot of my parenting, especially for him as my oldest, was out of fear.
Yeah,
I didn't want him to do the same things that I did, or turn out the same way that I turned out and make the same mistakes that I did. And so I pushed him hard, and he was the oldest, so he got most of it. And so I definitely didn't do everything right. Now, it's only by the grace of God that we're able to have a conversation, and he sees it as such a positive anyway, because it definitely, the love was always there, and I always loved him and I always wanted the best for him. And when I would push too hard, it's like, there was definitely no ill intent behind any of it. But I just didn't do things right. You learn and grow and mature over time. But the idea behind it was always to see him reach the potential that God had for him. And so, it may sound good now, but I definitely did a lot of things that I shouldn't and went too hard. But I think for you, Brady, at the end of the day, the fact that you have a dad that loves you, that cares about you, that is intentional, wanting to do the right things as a father to help raise you the right way, to see you succeed, it's a huge blessing that you may not know now, but as you get older, you'll see like that's not all that common to have a dad in the home that loves and cares about their kids that much and makes sacrifices and does everything possible to pour into you and to raise you the right way. So there'll definitely be mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
But doing the things that you don't like to do, as far as cleaning, mowing, picking up after your sisters, whatever it may be, you may not necessarily enjoy it, and you may never learn to enjoy it, but it's part of growth and discipline and doing the things sometimes just because we have to. Like, I don't like this, but I know I got to do it, so I'm going to do it, So you'll get there.
Yeah.
And it's all part of it.
Yeah.
It's all part of growth.
Yeah. And Brady, of course, and I think a lot of us do this is, I expect Brady to respond with the maturity that I have after 38 years of life and lessons and hard knocks and God, using his rod to beat his just wisdom into my head when I'm refusing to take it. So, I have a lot more to learn, obviously, but and then just having grace and just hearing you guys speak that over Brady for where he's at, and then just trusting where God's gonna where he's gonna take him. So that's great.
But you can tell. I mean, just he's a good young man. So he's learning and growing. And I can look back. I think part of why I raised him, well, definitely a big part of why I raised him how I did, is just the way that my dad was with me.
Yeah.
And he made me clean every Saturday and get up early, and I hated it. I hated every bit of it. And then I'd have to go work with him, and we would paint fences and pick up horse poop and mowing and all the stuff that I absolutely hated. But looking back now, those are my best memories with my dad, because we were together. We worked together. We would take lunches and eat these little cold sandwiches that ended up the best, and drink a Coke or something. And so they're great memories looking back. And so as you get older, like right now, you're going to be like, what, I got to clean again? I don't even see anything on the floor. Why am I sweeping it or vacuuming it, But as you get older and you're with your kids, you'll be like, man, those are cool times with my dad. We worked together. We were in the heat. We suffered together a little bit, but we made it,
Yeah. I think big thing, just to speak to you and any other dads out there, the big thing for me that made the difference. And I mean, I know that he messed up a lot. I know that there were times that things went too far, and, things were done, or I got pushed to a point to where, I wasn't very happy. But what really brought that out, and what allows us to be able to sit here and talk about it and laugh about it, and just see it as a positive, is the pure humility. He, growing up and going to the University of Oklahoma, I interacted with a lot of people that are very different from myself. And one thing that I found is a lot of people have, dads that are just very inactive. They don't I know a majority of the people that I've talked to there, they're like, yeah, my dad's never told me that he loves me, and he's never told me that he's sorry. And for me, that was just a foreign concept. I didn't understand it. But I think that being able to be a foreign concept is one of the biggest blessings of my life, because he was always humble enough, even to me being, a 7 or 8 year old, he was humble enough to come back to me and be like, hey, that was too far. I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened. It won't happen again. And if it does, I'm going to apologize to you again. He was never too prideful to come to a 7 or 8 year old and be like, hey, I was wrong. Yeah. And, everything that has gone on, that maybe shouldn't have, and even some of the things that I didn't think was necessarily wrong, if he's looked back on it or felt convicted by God about it, he's come to us just openly and just been like, hey guys, this is the truth. He'll sit the whole family down and tell us where he messed up. And that's been a great example of what a man should be to me. And it's a hard example to follow, but it's one that's well worth it, and it's made all the difference, because I think that if we grew up and were raised the way that we were without being told that he loves us every single day, multiple times a day, growing up and even past being out of the house, we wouldn't have the same perspective on what our childhood was. Yeah. We wouldn't have the same perspective on, okay, that was to teach us, that was to help us grow, because we just wouldn't know. Because even if he had the same heart behind it, but he never told us that, we wouldn't understand it. We'd be like, oh, he's just mean. Oh, he's just making us do this. But the humility to be able to say, hey, this is where that came out of. It went too far. It was wrong. But, I do love y'all. I am sorry. This is going to change. And then the real humility to actually act on that, and to allow 7, 8, and, when I was 10 years old, my brother was 6. So a 10 and 6-year-old to hold you to your word. I think that takes a lot for a man, even though they're your children, it does take a lot to be able to be like, hey, when a 6-year-old calls me out on something that I said I wasn't going to do anymore, because believe me, that 6-year-old would tell him. Yeah, Mason had no trouble. Mason didn't have any issue. If Dad said 3 years ago, hey, make sure that this doesn't happen again, Mason would be like, oh, you're doing it again. And he's got to be like, all right. And he takes it on the chin and goes with it. It's so easy to be like, all right, but I'm your dad, so blah, blah, blah. I'm this, so, just listen to me. But there was always humility. There was always, he treated us, even though we were, 10 and 6, treated us as equals. He treated us as people that he could trust.
Yeah. And that shows in just the way that you guys are, the way that you interact with adults, just even as you guys were young men, even before graduating. So just the way that you could have a conversation with adults and the confidence that you had. Yeah. So, that feeds into that as well.
As we bring this episode of Real Estate for the Real Good to a close, we want to extend our sincere gratitude to you, our early listeners. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we hope that today's discussion has left you both informed and encouraged. One of the most significant takeaways from today's episode is the reminder that no one has all the answers, especially when it comes to parenting and guiding our children to follow God and make wise decisions as adults. I'm coming to realize that being present, vulnerable, and humble can compensate for most any uncertainties we may have as we grow and learn alongside our kids. A special thank you goes out to our guest co-host, Brady. It was wonderful having him be a part of today's conversation, and we look forward to welcoming Kristen to the podcast for episode 2. In that episode, we'll have the privilege of learning from our friends, Brad and Jenny Nethery, as they share how they use their home in a unique way to become debt-free. But before that, stay tuned for part B of Jacob's journey, which will be released next week. We'll dive deeper into the practical aspects of property management and investment, as well as how Jacob was able to purchase the home at such a young age with very little credit history. If you enjoyed today's episode and found it valuable, please consider subscribing to our podcast and leaving a review. Your feedback is invaluable in helping us improve and reach more individuals looking to make informed decisions in real estate. You can also find us on YouTube at For the Real Good or on Instagram at Real Estate for the Real Good. As we part ways from now, we pray that God would bless you and keep you, and that his face would shine upon you as you seek to know him more, to trust his will on your life, and surrender to his direction and care.